Oh, I love that we get to use that.
Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of Gospel Unplugged. My name is Pastor Ben Cieslik, and today I am joined by...
Pastor Lose.
Fun to flip spots for a day. We are talking about... Fun for me.
Fun for you. Okay.
Yes. Today we're talking about John 9, another long, full, dynamic, rich story. We're going to read selections of it. So I invite you to read it on your own to get the full scope of the story, because there's some fun things that we weren't necessarily able to include, but I think we get the gist of what's happening here. So we'll read it, and excited to hear what you have to say.
Me too.
Good. As Jesus walked along, he saw a man blind from birth. He spat on the ground and made mud with the saliva and spread the mud on the man's eyes, saying to him, "Go wash in the pool of Siloam." Then the man went and washed and came back able to see. The neighbors and those who had seen him before as a beggar began to ask, "Is this not the man who used to sit and beg?" Some were saying, "It is he." Others were saying, "No, but it is someone like him." He kept saying, "I am the man." But they kept asking him, "Then how were your eyes opened?" He said, "The man called Jesus made mud, spread it on my eyes, and said to me, 'Go to Siloam and wash.' Then I went and washed and received my sight." They said to him, "Where is he?" The man said, "I do not know." They brought to the Pharisees the man who had formerly been blind. Now it was a Sabbath day when Jesus made the mud and opened his eyes. Then the Pharisees also began to ask him how he had received his sight. He said to them, "He put mud on my eyes, then I washed, and now I see." Some of the Pharisees said, "This man is not from God, for he does not observe the Sabbath." But others said, "How can a man who is a sinner perform such signs?" And they were divided. So they said again to the blind man, "What do you say about him? It was your eyes he opened." He said, "He's a prophet." For a second time, they called the man who had been blind, and they said to him, "What did he do to you? How did he open your eyes?" He answered them, "I have told you already, and you would not listen. Why do you want to hear it again? Do you also want to become his disciples?" Then they reviled him, saying, "You are his disciple, but we are disciples of Moses. We know that God has spoken to Moses, but as for this man, we do not know where he comes from." The man answered, "Here is an astonishing thing. You do not know where he comes from, and yet he opened my eyes. If this man were not from God, he could do nothing." Just making sure there wasn't more on the backside. Because there's more to the story.
There is more to the story.
But what from this selection, or how do you want to contextualize this for folks? What's happening here?
Yeah, it is one more huge story in John, and I think it's a particularly interesting one because a lot of biblical scholars think, and I agree, that this is a story in which John tries to tell the story not just of the man born blind, but of his community. Mm-hmm. So John is by far the latest of the Gospels, the most different of the Gospels, and the thinking, we've talked before about how all of the Gospels are addressed to a particular community going through particular challenges, which is why they're different.
Yeah.
And the thought is that John's community were a number of Jewish people who believed Jesus was the Jewish Messiah. And for a long time, they are part of a fairly broad, large, liberal synagogue. And after the crisis of the destruction of the temple, it's not unusual for communities to go through, when they come through a crisis, to want to define their identity more narrowly. And so there's this break, there's this breach. And those Jews who believe Jesus is the Messiah are now sort of forced out or exiled from their home community. And there are actually historical documents that back that up.
Sure.
And so a lot of people think this story sort of shares the story of these believers. They believed in Jesus. They were questioned by their family members, their local Pharisees. They were pushed out of the synagogue. And one of the scenes we miss in this is when the Pharisees call the man's parents and say, "What do you say about him?" And they essentially say, "He's of age, ask him." And then John goes on to narrate, they answered this way because they were afraid of being kicked out of the synagogue.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of kind of pathos or emotion, I think, under the surface of the story of the conflict. And if you've ever had like a break in your family or a split in your congregation or, a falling out with a sibling, you get how much that hurts. And so that's like one whole level.
How intense those feelings are too.
How very intense and personal and fraught with emotion, all of that is. So that's one level. At the same time, I just think it's one of the funniest stories John tells. And there are a couple points here that that you just like when they say, wasn't this the man born blind? And I was like, he sure looks like him. I don't think it's him. And he's kind of like, no, it's me. It's me. Like, I can see you now, but it's still me.
And then they follow up like, where's Jesus?
Yeah. What did he do? Made me wash, whatever. And where is he? I don't know. I was blind.
Yeah. I didn't see where he went.
I couldn't even tell you what he looks like because I was blind. Yeah. So that's very funny. And then the Pharisees call him to question him. They call him back again. And he just has the cheekiest answer when they're like, what happened? What did you do? He's like, I already told you already. Why do you want to know? Would you like to become his disciples? And they're like, no. So there's this kind of just sense of humor, which I think also comes out in times of crisis, that you're going to laugh about it, you're going to cry about it. Yeah. And I love that John chooses the tact of like saying to his community, it's okay, you chose the right person. Jesus is the Messiah. And like, this is really hard, but let's laugh about it too. And so there's a lot there that I feel like is, I don't know how I'm going to get into a 10-minute sermon, but there's a lot there. So
there's a lot there. And I also think, we get a lot of this idea of like being able to see rightly or perceive rightly who Jesus is. And, we didn't read this portion either, but there becomes this question between Jesus and the Pharisees about being able to recognize and know who is from God. And it is this theme that is throughout John's gospel of if you're able to recognize Jesus rightly, you know that he comes from God. And here the Pharisees claim their ability to recognize that, well, we know Moses. Moses came from God. We don't know about you. And it signifies that they're missing the point entirely of the person who's standing in front of them.
Yeah, and the truth teller becomes the man born blind, who is now increasingly on the outs from his community and the Pharisees. And he's the one to say, well, this is kind of curious. Never in the history of the world has someone opened another person's eyes, but you're not sure he's from God? Like, really?
Yeah.
So I think there is that dynamic as well. And of course, it's been a story that has inspired lots of Christian reflection and artwork. And of course, maybe the easiest place to point is Amazing Grace. I once was blind and now I see. And that dynamic of how faith opens your eyes physically in the case of the man born blind, but spiritually in terms of when you come to faith, you see your life different. You see your neighbors' lives different. You see people around you as neighbors instead of as, fill in the blank, strangers, people that live near me, people who are threatening, or people who are suspicious. A lot happens when you come to faith in the healing, saving Jesus. There's a lot there.
Well, in helping to narrow people's reflections a little bit, what would you want them to be considering in anticipation of Sunday?
Yeah, one of the pieces we leave out too is more or less the end that you alluded to, where Jesus, has a little bit of a clash with the Pharisees, but that happens because he goes and finds the man born blind and invites him into an actual relationship with the person now who healed him, you know. And so one of the questions I thought of was referencing earlier, when you have gone through really difficult emotional, wrenching times, how can it help to remember that Jesus will always come back for you? Like, you are not alone in times of struggle. Jesus will be there for you.
Yeah.
And a second question might be, can you think about your life of faith and think about a time where your Christian faith, your trust in God, changed the way you think or the way you see something or someone?
Yeah.
And I think that might be a really important question, because I think we don't always give faith not that we don't give it. I don't know that we always recognize or realize that faith isn't something we nod our head to, but we enter into, and it can change us. So when was a time that your Christian faith changed the way you see someone or something? And if the answer is never, then is it the faith that we're reading about and talking about?
Yeah.
And that's a question for me as much as anyone else.
Yeah, it points to a power to transform how we perceive the world. And it's something that I think happens to us week after week when we gather for worship on Sunday, and hope that it happens for you when we see you next Sunday.